Hello, good morning everyone. I'm from representative of Group 6. Today, in this occasion, I would like to present about problem-based learning. Before that, let me introduce myself. My name is Kadek Anggreni Putri. I'm as a speaker 1 and here I'm not alone. I have one partner. Her name is Sinta Cahya Dewi as a second speaker. Today, in this occasion, we will present about several material. The first one is definition of learning model. The second one is definition of problem-based learning. The third one is the characteristic of problem-based learning. The fourth one is the objective of problem-based learning. The next one is the example of problem-based learning. The next one is the process of problem-based learning, the analysis of problem-based learning, the result of the research of problem-based learning, the strength and the weakness of problem-based learning, and the last one, we will discuss about the conclusion. And then, I'm Anggreni. As a first speaker, I will discuss about definition, a learning model, definition of problem-based learning, characteristic, objective, and the example of problem-based learning. And next, my partner, Sinta Dewi, she will continue my presentation by the process of problem-based learning, the analysis and the result, and the last, strength and weakness, and then the conclusion. Okay, the first one, I will talk about the definition of learning model. According to Tahir 2012, learning model is one of the terms as an approach to learning. Learning model is a plan that used as a guide in planning learning in the classroom. In other words, the learning model is a planning pattern that teachers use to arrange face-to-face learning in the classroom that using learning material such as a book, media like a video or film, computer, and curriculum. The example of learning model are cooperative learning, discovery or inquiry-based learning, problem-based learning, and project-based learning. One of the learning model that we'll discuss is problem-based learning. Okay, the next one I will present about the definition of problem-based learning based on some experts. The first one, according to Othman and Shah 2013, the problem-based learning emerged from a number of medical schools, especially the Case Western Reserve University in the United States of America in 1950 and McMaster University Faculty of Health Science in Canada in the late of 1960. The problem-based learning prepares students to face problems in the real life and they solve the problem. The critical thinking skill as a student are prioritized to prevent student learning boredom. Besides that, according to Merrill 2002, cited in Tahir et al. 2011, problem-based learning or PBL is usually implemented by dividing the class into small groups. The teachers become a facilitator to provide a number of problems for students, and the teacher's job is to guide students to solve the problem. The student will gain confidence, experience, and critical skill in this method. So, the quality of guidance will be reduced. Next one, according to Safari 2006, problem-based learning is an instructional approach that focuses on students to research the problem and apply the knowledge and critical skill. So they can develop and analyze viable solution to predetermined problem. The most important thing in this method is the selection of problems and a teacher to guide the learning process. so that the students are able to solve their own problems and they can reach the end of their learning experience. And the last one, based on Sonmes and Lee, 2003, cited in Tahir Kli et al. 2011, problem-based learning is an instructional learning approach that challenges students to find solutions to the problem in the real world, individually or in a group. Problem-based learning prioritizes developing skill as an independent learner rather than learning using the textbook or the lecture. It means the problem-based learning challenge the student to find the solution individually or in a group without a lecturer or textbook. So, it can be concluded that the problem-based learning is a learning approach that involves students to solve their own problem that's instructed by the teacher according to the syllabus or core syllabus during the semester. In this model, the teacher facilitates the student learning process by grouping the student, providing the presentation schedule, and preparing the student and teacher evaluation form. In the problem-based learning method, the problem are the main thing and become an important element. The next one, I will present about the characteristic of problem-based learning. Problem-based learning is a learning approach where the students work in a small group to increase their knowledge and develop their problem-solving skill. The main characteristic of the problem-based learning is that the problem given is the material that students have not studied. It means the teacher gives the student the new problem or the new material so they can learn individually or in a group so they can increase the critical thinking and they can solve the problem. This is such as a more traditional problem-solving approach. The second important character is a problem that's given is similar to the problem in the real life. So it is required student to gain the new information and train their critical thinking or independent learning so they can get the new knowledge in solving problems. Based on Barrow, cited in Sefri 2006, describe 5 characteristics of problem-based learning. The first one is students have responsibilities with their own learning. Problem-based learning is a learning approach that contains the problem to be solved by the student to increase their knowledge or experience. The student motivation in learning will be increased when they have their own responsibility to find solution in the problem. The thing that is most active to the problem learning is the extent to which information is already known to the student and information that student need to learn. Each individual has responsibility to find relevant information and sharing it back with the group to develop the solution. The second one is the problem simulation used in problem-based learning must be unstructured. Critical thinking skill developed in problem-based learning are the ability to analyze the problem and develop the solution. When the problem that's given well structured, the student will less motivation or less motivated to develop the solution because the problem in the real world are unstructured. Then the student must to prepare unstructured problem and find the solution to problem solving. The knowledge that student learning during the self-directed learning must be applied back to the problem and reanalyzed. The purpose of the self-directed learning is to collect information that will be shared with the group for the discussion-making process related to the problems. Each individual share what they has learned and how the information impact to development of solution to the problem. The For one is the activities carried out in the problem-based learning must be useful in the real life. The problem selection is the authentic guide in problem-based learning. Through the problem-based learning, students will transfer the skill such as the critical thinking, analyze, and developing the solution in the real-world content. And the last one, the student examination can make sure student progress toward the goal of problem-based learning. The next, I will present about the characteristic of problem in problem-based learning. According to Dutch et al. 2001, there are some characteristics in problem-based learning. The first one is the problem given must motivate students to gain more complex and complete knowledge. The problem must require students to be able to take or make decisions and have the strong reason to defend them. The next one is the problem given should have the clear content objective so it can be related to their prior knowledge. The next one is if the problem designed for group, the problem level must be considered to make sure that the students work together to solve the problem. And the last is if the problem is used in a multi-stage project, the problem must be open-ended and it can attract student interest in the problem. Okay, there are some characteristics of problem in problem-based learning. There are two objectives of problem-based learning. They are knowledge-based and process-based. Students need to assess from these two aspects to make sure that students get the in-depth benefit from this method. Students take responsibility to content through the involvement in problem solving. Students must be able to recognize and articulate what they know and what they have learned. The next one, I will present about the objective of problem-based learning. Based on Dutch et al. 2001, problem-based learning is a learning method in which complex real-world problems are used as a means to develop student knowledge about facing problems in the real world directly, fact and concept. According to Board and Vallely, 1991 cited in Dutch et al. 2001, this learning starts from the problem, question, and puzzle that must be solved by the student. Based on Dutch et al. 2001, in this method, the real world problem will be motivate students to solve this problem in small group. So, it will be create the ability to identify unity to collective the capacity, communicate information, and integrating information. So, problem-based learning has several objectives, such as the first one is through this method, students will have the ability to think critically and able to analyze in solving the real-world problem. Because in this method, students will be given the complex problem and students will learn to think critically, analyze the problem, and find the best solution to this problem. The second one is by implementing the problem-based learning method, we can learn to develop the ability to solve complex problems. The third, this method can develop flexible and effective communication skill, both in writing and orally. When analyzing the problem, students working in group must be able to work together. So, in this method, students are expected to improve their communication skill, flexibility, and effectively. The last one is this method can also provide the opportunity to work in group and find and evaluate the problem. It means the students work in group and they find the solution to the problem and try to evaluate the problem. And next, I will continue my presentation by present about the example of problem-based learning. Here, I provide one example, namely problem statement worksheet. According to Clayton and Pierpoint, 1996, Using the worksheet, work plan can be applied with directed learning. In the worksheet assessment, students are divided into several groups. The educator gives a problem statement to each group. There are several steps in the worksheet activity. The first one is understand and clarify the problem. The chair or the captain will ask all of the members of group whether there are words or concepts in the problem statement that the group member does not understand. If there is, the group will clarify the problem and give each other suggestion. The second one is the chair or the captain will ask the group member what they need to be explained in the statement. At this stage, students will find a little by a little information about the problem statement based on their own knowledge. The third one is brainstorm session. In this session, each student in the group will express their opinion about the problem statement. The student will make contribution. And also in this session, the student will deliver their opinion about what they know about the problem statement. So they will talk about what they know about the problem statement based on their own knowledge. The next one is agree of points that are not clear. In this session, the chair or the captain will guide the group, all the member group, for a list of points that are not clear. In this session, all the member of group can be mentioned what the point they don't understand yet. So the chair will give the explanation about that. And after that, the group will agree with their learning objective. After all the problem finish, they make a agreement or they will agree with their learning objective. And the last activity is the group will collect the information that has been mutually agreed upon. In this session, make sure all the members of group agree with the statement, problem, and the solution.
Thank you, Ayu Anggreni. Hello everyone, I am Sinta Cahya Dewi. Here, I will continue to present the rest of the material, which are the process of problem-based learning, the analysis of the video implementation of problem-based learning, the result of the research implemented based on the problem-based learning, strengths and the weaknesses, and the last conclusion. So, you have learned the general of the problem-based learning in the previous. To make it complete your understanding, you have to figure out how the implementation has done, so that you can more comprehend the method properly. Alright, now we will move to the process of problem-based learning. Here we go. So, according to Hamelo-Silver 2004, there are 6 cycles provided in the implementation of problem-based learning, namely problem scenario, identify facts, generate hypotheses, knowledge deficiencies, apply new knowledge, and the last, abstractions. First, problem scenario. In the problem scenario, students have to formulate and analyze the problem they got from the teacher. Students use their brainstorming to design the scenario. So, students have to define the problem and determine what they know about the problem using their background knowledge. And then they search what they need to learn and how they found the data. So, problem-based learning will help students in increasing their content or conceptual knowledge by writing or communication. Second, identify facts. So, students will identify the relevant facts of the scenario. Students are able to present the problem by identifying the facts. In this case, students are able to ask a question or provide ideas openly and freely in their theme. Third, generate hypotheses. In this step, students started to generate hypotheses about a possible solution. In this case, teachers let students search various sources and share their ideas to generate the hypothesis to solve the problem. The role of the teacher here is providing critical questions to students. Through the critical question, students will increase their ideas and knowledge in analyzing the problem. Fourth, knowledge deficiencies. In the first step, students learn about these knowledge deficiencies during their self-directed learning or CDL. Students have collected the information and data individually at home. Besides, they work in team. Therefore, they are able to enhance their self-directed in looking for a solution to the problem. Fifth, apply new knowledge. Students started to apply their new knowledge in evaluating their hypotheses based on what they have learned and discussed in a group. Each group will present their findings, include the solution they got in front of the class. Through different findings, they will learn the new knowledge. So the teachers will straighten out the point of the findings from different groups. And then teachers will give an evaluation of each group's finding result at the end of the presentation. And the last is abstraction. In the last step, students reflect on the abstract knowledge obtained. Students must evaluate their performance to improve their improvements in solving the next problem. The role of this teacher here is help the students to learn the cognitive skills needed for problem solving and collaboration. Alright, those are 6 cycles provided in the implementation of problem-based learning. Now we will move to the next slide. Next material is analysis of problem-based learning implementation. So here, we have provided you to the video of the implementation of problem-based learning in the classroom. The video entitled Problem-Based Learning was published on August 23, 2011 by Pune House School Channel. So before we analyze the video, let's watch it first.
The technique of problem-based learning is to apply your learning to an actual case scenario. The way it works in anatomy and physiology is we take a scenario of a person that has some kind of injury or illness, and we give lots of symptoms about that person and maybe some historical data, maybe even genetic data, that help to unravel what could be wrong with that person. It's really the scientific method, because what you're doing is taking observations and then you're creating a hypothesis about what could be wrong, and then you collect data and you analyze the data, and then you try to come up with a conclusion or a diagnosis. They have to work collaboratively. So that's really important, that each person comes up with some information and then they pool their information to try to come up with a diagnosis. The other part of it is that they are exploring areas of their interest. So they take off in directions and then they allow that to go down avenues of choice that give them an idea of who they are and what they're interested in. This course is an elective course. Some of the students have had tremendous background in biological sciences and some very little. I try to create a course that has something for everybody. Many of the cases have terminology that are beyond any course or anything that they've ever been exposed to. But this generation, they can get out there and they know where to find the answers. I encourage them not just to bring in what they already know, but extend that and add to that.
I really like the problem-based learning because it's kind of like self-guided. So as a group, you figure out your own things and research things outside of the classroom and on your own. When we first read the case, we were like, oh my gosh, you have to be kidding. Like, there's no way we can figure this out. There was like probably 30 words we didn't even understand. So we divided it all up and we had to research it. And then at the end, it was pretty cool to like figure out exactly what it was, because we pretty much wanted to give up in the beginning. And then it was really enlightening that we got to figure it out, and we felt pretty proud when we did that.
Making it real is so important for the kids. If you have it patterned after a real person or a real event, the kids can relate to it more, they can buy into it more. It has to do with their life a little bit more.
At the end of the project, we found out that some of our patients were actually modeled after individuals that went to Punahou, and it was kind of scary to find out that some of these problems happen to individuals that are teenagers, but I appreciate the fact that the actual patients were real.
You can create a problem or a situation that brings in data and application to whatever your discipline is. Having a situation that then they can work on and try to unravel and feel like they're taking somewhere is so empowering. I feel that the whole process is something that can be of value to any teacher in any class.
Alright, that's an example of implementation of problem-based learning in the classroom. So, there are 4 aspects that we analyzed through this video. The first is introduction. In the video, the teacher begins to give the explanation of what problem-based learning is, and then how the implementation and the benefits given. So, teachers explain about the method of problem-based learning that helps students to unravel what could be wrong by making observations, and then creating a hypothesis, and then collecting data, and then analyze the data, and try to come up with a conclusion or a diagnosis. The second aspect is students' activity. So here, the teacher gives them a sheet of paper about the problem that must be solved. They will learn collaboratively to gain the answer to the problem. All students start taking observation and exchange their ideas with their friends in a group. And each student comes up with the information by exploring the areas they interest in. Furthermore, they started to discuss the problem given by the teacher. The third is students' improvement. By applying problem-based learning in the learning process, made students to learn to create a hypothesis about the problem based on their experience. So, they have to develop an initial hypothesis to test as they research the solution. In addition, students are able to improve their critical thinking skills through do not quickly agree with the explanation and do criticism from the information obtained. They also learn to make a diagnosis of the problem. The fourth is teacher's role. In this method, teachers plays a role as a facilitators. The teacher only gives the problem that will be solved by the students. The role of the teacher here is not too much because this method emphasizes the student-centered approach. So in conclusion, problem-based learning is a method that increases students' knowledge by observing and analyzing data and to solve the problem independently. Students will learn about the problem or a situation that brings in data application in group work. By this method, they learn to work not collaboratively only, but individually also. Based on the video, it can be seen the implementation of problem-based learning in the classroom. The process implementation of problem-based learning runs appropriately. They have reached the main point of the method. Yet, it will be better if they complete the process with present the result findings and do the evaluation based on the findings and performance. Alright, that's the analysis of the video problem-based learning. Now we will move to the next material. Here, we listed the research about problem-based learning entitled Transforming English Language Writing Skill, Employing Problem-Based Learning. This research, written by Gulam Datsjir, Muhammad Tanvir Afzal, and Nausaba Atta in 2019, published Journal of Research in Social Sciences. In this research, there are 4 objectives of this study. First, determine how much learners in experimental and controlled groups achieve in English writing skill after their treatment through problem-based learning and conventional pedagogy. Second, evaluate which group of learners achieves more after the use of PBL and conventional pedagogy for learning English writing skill. Third, examine how PBL affects English writing skill between secondary level students, gender, and local groups. And the last, ascertain the impact of PBL on English writing skill of various groups of secondary level students. The subject of this research was the students, randomly male, female, rural, and urban, studying in NINT class at 12 federal government schools. And then for the instrument, they use pre-test and post-test control group designed for this experimental study. The research design is the experimental study followed pre-test and post-test control group experimental design. The data analysis in numerical data was analyzed using inferential and descriptive statistics tools. Mean scores were compared through t-tests, paired sample tests, and independent samples tests, while the performance of various groups were compared using ANOVA and SIFT tests. Alright, the next material, or the data collection and procedures of this research. For the data collection, there are 3 parts. The researchers choose on teacher from each of the 12 schools who showed their willingness and consent to teach the experimental groups. The volunteers of teacher will train for employing PBL through a workshop to develop this learning module. Second, the researchers analyze using inferential and descriptive statistics tools. Mean scores were compared through t-tests, paired samples tests, and independent samples tests, while the performance of various groups was compared using ANOVA and SIFT tests. And the last is the researchers took randomly male, female, rural, and urban excellent students studying in NINT class at 12 federal government schools. The next is the parts of procedures. There are 4 parts of procedures. In the first meeting, teachers introduce new topic or idea, and then they will discuss the idea and define the problem clearly with work in themes. Before that, the teacher divided students into several groups consist of 4 or 5 students. In addition, they also find out the information and data for more at home to solve the problem. In the second meeting, students openly share the ideas in groups and make a draft to write the essays. If they could not finish it during the class, they are able to continue at home. So, by continuing it at home helps students more information and possible solutions. In the last meeting, the teacher led students to select the appropriate solution about the problem after discussion in groups. Furthermore, every group has to present the result or findings in front of the class. By presenting the result, the class reached the most appropriate solution. So the conclusion of the result gives them a sense of satisfaction and achievement. So, students completed the learning process and 3 consecutive meetings. Generally, the learning process held in 3 days, but the experimentation continued for 20 weeks and post-test was conducted at the end. Alright, now we are going to discuss the findings of this research. The subjects used in this research were named grade male and female students studying at urban and rural schools. It was consist of 12 randomly selected schools using a stratified sampling technique. The students who was selected was random. A pretest was administered on named grade students studying in 2 sections of each of these schools. They were required to write English essays to show their competence in English writing skills. The students from both the sections at each school were equated on the basis of pre-test results. They were named as experimental and control groups. 416 students were assigned to the experimental group and 415 to the control group. For the table 1, shows the students' location in experimental and control groups at each school. And for the table 2, shows the analysis of pre-test data of experimental and control groups. In table 3, shows the results of experimental group, and then table 4 shows the elaboration of the point of paired sample t-test, and then for table 5, shows the pre-test and post-test mean scores of control group students were also compared. In table 6, shows the elaboration of the point of paired sample t-test, and then table 7 shows the comparison mean scores of experimental and control groups. Next, for table 8, shows the comparison of male and female groups' performance. Next, for table 9, shows the comparison post-test mean scores of rural and urban experimental groups. And then for the table 10, shows the comparison mean scores of all the groups selected on the local and genders. For the table 11, shows the difference is found when post-hoc tests or SIF tests were employed, and the last table 12 shows the ranking of groups' performance. So, the conclusion of this research is it was found that pedagogy was more effective than conventional methods. Female students learned to write English more than male students. Students' English writing skills in rural schools are lower than in urban schools. Female students in urban schools study more than rural female, urban male, and rural male. Rural female and urban male students have the same opportunity to learn. Therefore, both of them showing an increase in English writing skills. Yet, students in rural male groups had the lowest English writing skills among rural female, urban male, and urban female. Alright, the next material is the strengths and weaknesses of problem-based learning. According to Hadi and Izas, 2018, there are several strengths and weaknesses possessed by problem-based learning. The strengths of problem-based learning. By working in teams, students have the opportunity to collaborate with others in a group together in order to solve the problem they face. Small group discussion is a vehicle to students sharing the ideas and answering the questions. So, the students will get to know each other and improve their abilities to retain and recall information. They are able to take the responsibility on their own learning. Second, through work in teams, students learn to be a leader in a team. This capability gives students opportunity to be a leader and organize the steps to solve the problem. Third, students are able to increase their oral and written communication. In this case, students may use oral and written communication in order to make the discussion alive. And then fourth, by implementing this method, students have begun to be able to control the themes in order to self-awareness and evaluate the process. So they started to find another alternative to get the solution. Fifth, students started to criticism in analyzing the information. they are able to increase their critical thinking skills. 6. They have been able to explain the concepts with the simple way they have understood. 7. Students are able to apply this method in their real life. By applying in the real life, made them more understand the implementation. And the last, by applying this method, students are able to apply it in other courses. Besides the strengths, there are the weaknesses of problem-based learning. First, the replacement of teacher-centered to student-centered. In this case, teachers as a facilitators will replace by students' observation. So students more focus on the search for the material independently. Second, teachers more required facilitating students than giving the explanation directly. Students will discuss with their teams so that teacher's explanation can be inefficiently done. Third, by working with teams and gain different ideas from others or sources made the knowledge being less organized than the explanation given by the teacher in the traditional class. Fourth, the traditional teacher has a difficult experience to implement this method in their teaching process. And the last is quiet spend much time to complete this method. So the implementation of problem-based learning needs more than one meeting to solve the problem and present the solution based on themes. So it needs a lot of time to solve it. So the conclusion of this method is problem-based learning is a method that uses problems as an approach to encourage students to think critically when they face a problem. This method also teaches them how to work in a group, especially in exchange for the ideas and accepted other ideas in order to get the answer to solve the problem. This method is appropriately applied with the aim to increase students' critical thinking skills and work collaboratively. In conclusion, problem-based learning helps students to improve their knowledge by solving the problem.